Right. Second. Yeah. This. Okay. Hey, good talk. We're up to Perik Aleph of Kuntres HaHispaalus. I don't have it. I didn't get a chance to get it all set up with Hebrew English. If I get it, I can post it on the chat. But for now, this is what I have. It's just Hebrew. I set it up like this because the original has a lot of biurim on it. It's a lot of page turning. Okay, so this is now the second letter that the Mitteler sent out. The first letter was the introduction, where he explained the issues. He's going to give a brief summary of those issues here, and then he's going to start explaining the fundamentals of the Vaida and Chassidus. Be'ez Hashem, L'chlolos hanash b'tivin Aseinu, Me'admor Deiber, Zecher Tzadik V'Kalesh L'Bracha, Mishmas V'Gins B'Reim, Zepus Yagin Eleinu, Amen. This was a letter sent to all the Chassidim of our country from the Rebbe, the Mitteler Rebbe, of blessed memory. I mean, this was written later, this heading. And this was a letter that was sent to all the Chassidim in the year Tovkov Ayin Daled Perak, which is again a year after the passing of the Alter Rebbe. Based on what I explained in my first letter, Umutoyim bekama mine taos bedarche kabbalas divrei elikim chayim ba'ar taira v'avayda shebemides v'leiv menakata lakata mamish leimer la'ar chayshach v'chayshach ar mitzad miyat hayadir mitzad miyat ha'esak v'regilos. So like the Mitteler says, he explained in his first letter that many of the Chassidim, the old Chassidim and the new Chassidim, are confused and they're perplexed and confused in many different types of mistakes about the proper way to internalize Chassidus and apply it to their Torah and their Avodah with refining their character and in their heart, in davening, and they have mistakes from one extreme to the next, and these mistakes are leading them to say that light is darkness and darkness is light. Something that's really good, they say is bad. Something that's really bad, they say is good. And it's leading to a lot of confusion. And this is coming from a lack of knowledge. People just don't know enough about the fundamentals of Torah and Avodah and Chassidus and things like that, both from Chassidus and from earlier sources. Chassidus, like we know, Tanya is based on the Rambam, and it's based on the Maharal and the Shalah and the Arizal and different things like that. And also from a lack of experience of actually applying it in their Avodah. The ha'ikr, and the main reason that there are these problems is from the teachers. Mitzad histafas kokulim sheyotzu min ribad darshanim hamischakmim lehizhalol ha'imim razi lichulu ki yeshayda isbamitas ha'avodah. That there's a lot of the teachers that are lacking the proper knowledge and the proper experience, but then they go and preach. They come up with different theories and philosophies that they invent to try to explain the proper approach without having the right foundations and the right research behind it, the right experience behind it. And they praise themselves and say, I know the real secrets of Avodas Hashem. And even the Rebbe had this kind of issue where he would complain about the Spitz Chabad. The Rebbe would say one thing, and they'd say, really, the Rebbe meant something else. He said, no, I say what I mean what I say. But sometimes it takes a certain amount of research and work to understand what the Rebbe is saying. So we do have to apply ourselves. It's not obvious just from necessarily reading the Pashup Pshat the first time that we're going to understand everything. We might have to work and learn more things. And Torah is rich in one place and poor somewhere else. So you have to learn a lot and maybe look up sources and things. But we can't just, if we say we don't know, like today's actually Chitas, Rashi says, I don't know, right? If we don't know, we have to say I don't know. We shouldn't just invent a pshat that we think without a serious caveat that it might not be right. So people come up with these things and they say, "Oh, I know the real way you're supposed to do it," and this caused other people to just follow these mistaken misconceptions. And so they end up fooling themselves and fooling others until they people completely fall off from the proper avodah. They give up because they have these mistakes that lead them to, fail and to feel like it's not working, and they give up. Asher tsar li ma'od ma'od bazen. I have tremendous, tremendous pain from this. B'yesh toilin hakol bi, because everyone's quoting things in my name. V'shoyel mimeni kama me'anash dvarim bazen. Many of the Chassidim are coming and asking me questions based on these misconceptions. And they say, well, we know that you're not supposed to have a spylos, and so what should I do to get rid of it, or different things like that. She after Lisbol hakol dvorim hamutayim shenikfu k'may halacha psuka, and it's impossible to tolerate these confused words that became accepted like a clear halacha. V'zehu misibas hatalmidim shalei shimshu kol tzorchon shenestafu lishtais mayim haroyim hamemisim u'ma'avdim es hanefesh u'meitzim aisei me'ar l'cheshach gomer chulu. And this ultimately comes from the students that end up going and drinking these poison waters. That's the expression that's used when somebody's teaching Torah incorrectly, and it's destroying their souls, and it causes them to go from light to darkness, from light to complete darkness. Al Kain, therefore, Amarti, I said to myself, Shemitzvah v'chayva alai davka lefaresh levar heitev b'chol pirte prate and yonim hachalukim b'chol darchi avayd b'mayich v'lev kol davar amakayme madrigasei v'aifanov b'pirte pratis. And therefore I said to myself that it is a mitzvah and an obligation upon me, specifically because everyone is quoting things in my name, to explain and clarify everything, all the details of all different levels and avodah of the mind and the heart, and everything will be laid out clearly in its place with all the details, so we'll have this clear structure. Therefore, no one will come to err on their way. They'll have the proper path to follow, and they won't come to fool to other people. They won't mislead others. V'gam l'man hakim binyan kavua b'nafshay ba'ar Torah shemekabel shiyah hako natuva u'mushrash b'shayresh b'kesher kayim b'al yimid la'ilam kulu. And also with the right framework and the right structure of how to use and apply Chassidus, so then whatever they learn will be something that will have a permanent effect on the person, and will be firmly implanted and rooted inside their soul with a bond that will never be shaken forever. So there'll be an internalized the words of Chassidus in a way that will have a permanent, lasting effect, instead of these kind of fleeting inspiration that comes and goes, and a person feels like they're making progress and then they feel like they're not, they give up. Instead, it will be a proper, permanent thing. And the situation where people have the Chassidus, but they don't have the right framework or structure to how to apply it and internalize it properly, it's like a person that's at a feast and they have all these delicacies laid out in front of them, but they don't have a fork, so they can't eat. So it's a similar thing. Everybody has all the Chassidus, but without the right framework, they don't know how to apply it and use it. The person is gonna die of from and whatever starvation and yearning for the food just because he doesn't have a fork, a utensil. Kach kol teres emes bezbeinos v'yediyah esalukus sha'anchilenu kvayd amor zal nishmas edim kol chadafum shiur delay. And this is the situation with all of the teachings of truth and the hisbainos, the contemplation of the knowledge of God that was given to us by my holy father, the Rebbe of blessed memory, may his soul rest in Eden, that he taught the Torah of Chassidus to each person on their level. Hagam shashogor hakol b'fiv, even though everyone is familiar with the words, so it's not that the information isn't available. Ach mitzad heder yedias oivan hakabbalah b'nafshem, but because people don't know how to apply it and how to internalize it in their avodah, in their souls, hine re'evim gam tzmeim, they're starving and thirsting. Aval b'li or b'chayis b'nafshei klal. And I think what he means here is that it's without, when he says it's without light and without chayas, meaning that there's a positive type of yearning, which is like a love of fire, but this isn't even that. This is that they're starving and thirsty and they're just giving up. So it's not because they don't, it's not a healthy yearning where you know what to do about it, so then it's directed to something and it's motivating you to do it. But here they are starving and thirsty and they don't know what to do about it, so they just give up. Until somebody, people ask after having considered the situation and they conclude that there's no hope, they say, what benefit is there from all of this, the Torah of Chassidus? And there's also some people that make the opposite mistake. They conclude that it must be that just to learn Chassidus as a philosophy is just these abstract concepts and just to memorize all these words. Like, you could do crossword puzzles, you could just do some kind of thing where you memorize all kinds of words and levels. That's the main Chassidus. And to internalize it into the soul, to have some sort of inspiration in the mind, and certainly in the heart, they say that's completely forbidden. Till they ask, how do I free myself from this inspiration that's coming spontaneously without my choice? Because he says if you have any sort of a feeling, then that's yeshus, you're feeling yourself. And they see this as one of the serious sins that destroys the soul, to have this kind of yeshus, like the old path of Chassidus, of the old Chassidim, where they used to do these exaggerated external types of shows of emotion, which were stopped because that was a chitzonius thing. So this is a little bit of a summary of what he talks about in the first letter. Now see how we have these two extremes, these two opposites, from one extreme to the next. In between, there's many other in-between stages and many different mistakes in between. And there's also a lot of other mistakes that also just as much confuse light for darkness and darkness for light. And these mistakes on all these different issues includes even the older Chassidim that are very well versed and very familiar with all the teachings of Chassidus, and they're at various levels in their knowledge and their avodah, and they consider themselves to be completely experts when it comes to Chassidus and avodah. They think they have it all mastered. They know the proper approach to serving Hashem, but really they're completely confused. And therefore, it's very necessary that I explain and clarify everything so that no one should hang a broken pot on me. That's an expression in the Gemara where somebody says something in the name of somebody else that's incorrect. The main thing is so that we can uphold the ultimate main purpose of the teachings of my father, the Alter Rebbe, with all of his teachings that he has been teaching us for these 30 years. That's been shining on us for these 30 years. And this was my entire desire from my youth, to bring this benefit to all of my beloved Hasidim, all the fellow Hasidim, and those that are searching for the words of the living God in truth. Everyone sincerely wants to know Hashem. I want to help them understand what the Alter Rebbe is teaching and get it right. That the light of Hasidus should be internalized into them and planted into them, and in line with the ultimate purpose, the ultimate goal. And this ultimate purpose is that godliness should be revealed in every person's soul on their level as is known. And we're going to explain this is the idea that we have this yechida, we have this godly soul, and we want every person's yechida should be turned on and plugged into their avodah, everyone on their level. So everyone could be on a different level on avodah. In general, nefesh ruach neshama chai yechida. In general, there's 5 different levels, and it's not so important what level they're on. The main thing is that their yechida should be turned on, that essence should be turned on, and should be plugged in to whatever level they're on. Okay, so that's kind of a recap of what he said previously. Behine Pesach Devorei Yair B'Chaluke HaKlolis Shebein Darchei Chasidim HaYishanim Bein Darchei Chasidim Asher Hechilenu V'Hoyer Lanu Am Or Zal Nishmas Eidim Yar Teras. So first, I have to explain the general difference between the old path of Chassidus and the new path that was taught to us by my father, the Alter Rebbe, in the light of his Torah. What was the true intention? What was the real essential point? That is the intention of the Alter Rebbe from the very beginning of his holy work. It wasn't once or twice that I heard from his holy mouth Shekal Iker Magmasei Vigiyase b'Mesiras Nefesh Mamish Ala Nash Rak Sheyukva B'Nafsham Gilelakus, that his entire desire and all of his efforts with literal self-sacrifice for the Hasidim was only for the purpose that godliness should be implanted into their souls. They should have a Gilelakus, revelation of godliness in them. Tahainu Sheyiyah Hispaalus Nafsham Rak Hispaalus Alukus Davka. And what does this mean? This means that their inspiration should be a godly inspiration, davka specifically, and not a fleshy, physical inspiration that's not godly at all. And so he's going to explain what this is. But basically, we have the Nefesh Elokis and we have Nefesh Hativis or the Nefesh Bahamis. The Nefesh Hativis, Nefesh Bahamis comes from Kavos Naiga. That's considered part of the guf, part of the body, and that includes the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara and all these things. And so a person could serve Hashem, like we're going to explain, in various levels. That's coming from the Nefesh Hativis, from the Nefesh Bahamis, but that is an external type of inspiration. We want that a person should have this deeper, higher inspiration that's coming from godliness, from the Nefesh Elokis, and we're going to understand this more as we continue. And in this general principle, and this is the main summary of the goal of Chassidus, which is the difference between serving Hashem with the soul and serving Hashem with the body. In other words, a person could serve God just externally, just nechitzonius. So generally, when we use that term, it means just serving Hashem physically with a physical body. But in Chassidus, when they say that, it means even if a person is serving with the mind and heart, but the type of inspiration is coming from bodily things. In other words, like the simplest form is a person, in other words, it's extrinsic motivation versus intrinsic motivation. A person could be serving Hashem because they want physical blessings, or maybe because they want Gan Eden al-Mahaba, or these kind of things. Those are extrinsic. Those are ultimately like a bodily, coming from a cheshbon of the Nefesh Bahamis, Nefesh Hativis. It's not able to appreciate godliness for its own sake. But the Neshama appreciates godliness for its own sake, so it's able to have intrinsic motivation. And this is also something that, this whole concept is based very much on Rambam's introduction to Perek Chelek, where he talks about that's where the Yugimel Animamins are, the Yugimel Ikrim, and there he gives a whole mashal about when you're educating a child, that at first you tell the child to learn so you'll get candy, and then learn so we'll give you clothes, and learn we'll give you money, and then learn so you'll get honor, and people call you a Rav or something like that. And all of those are extrinsic motivation. And those are all really a disgrace compared to the truth. The truth is a person whose soul is healthy and complete and is going to want to know the truth because it's true and do what's right because it's right. And that's coming from the godly soul. But a person that's not on that level, so he says it's like trying to explain color to a blind person. It's like they're not able to appreciate it. So therefore you have to be malbashit in this external type of lavush. And that's the idea of lavush of noiga, That's the basic idea that we're going to be explaining, the fundamental idea that we're explaining here. And in this cloud, there are many, many different details. But the basic rule is that if it's coming from the nefesh kiss, it's a godly thing, and there's no bad in it at all. Even when the godly soul shines into the nefesh bahamis, there's no bad there. On the contrast, the nefesh tivis is a mixture of good and bad. The eitz achayim, the eitz das, taivira, klipas naiga is a mixture of good and bad. And so it has good, but it also has bad to it, like we'll see. So first we have to explain the root of this general principle, even though everybody's familiar with this general idea that we want to serve Hashem with the soul and not just with the body, not just nefesh bahamis, but again, people don't understand it completely, and therefore they don't know how to apply it properly. But Inyan Yuvan behektem ayidua, and this will be understood based on the known introduction. On the pasuk va'atma dveikem b'Hashem hulu chaim kulchem. It says that you, Moshe speaking to the Jewish people, that you who are connected to God, you're cleaved to Hashem, you're attached to Hashem, you are all alive today. So this implies that if we don't have this dveikus, this connection to Hashem, then we're not called alive, we're called dead. Uksiv, and it says in another pasuk, a seeming contradiction. It says, you should love Hashem because He is your life. And you can't you can't explain that what it means is that you should love Hashem because the love of Hashem is your life. To imkain because then it should have been said in the feminine form that he in the feminine form, the love is a feminine word, is your life. But lama amar hu chayacha. Why do you say because he is your life in the masculine? The simple meaning of this pasuk is obvious to everyone, that it's giving the reason you should love Hashem because Hashem is your life. Lama ta'alayv, why should you love? Lefisha uchayacha, because Hashem is your life. The im kain yesh lavan. So now we have a question. Ma tzarich l'spailos ha'ava achar shekvar hu chayacha mamish. If God is already your life, you don't have to be told to have a mitzvah to love yourself. If something is already your entire life, what bigger hispailos, what bigger inspiration could you have than the fact that this is your very life? So seemingly, if you already have this dveikos, if you already have this connection with the nefesh elokis, which is your entire being is godly, so what's this idea that you have to have ava? Ava is usually the idea that there's something that's separate from you, like you love another person or you love something outside of you. So if our connection to God is essential, and it's just part of who we are, so that's dveikos. And why do we need ava? And if it's something separate from us, right? So then it would be ava, but the reason kihu chayacha seems to imply that it's dveikos. So the basic, he's going to explain it, but the basic idea is that we have our nefesh kiss, which is in a way of dveikos, and it's our very essence. And then we want to take that essential godly life of our nefesh kiss and plug it into our nefesh mahabis, to our nefesh tivis. And our nefesh kiss should shine in, so when our nefesh kiss is shining into our nefesh tivis, that creates an ava also that's revealed in the nefesh tivis, in our minds and in our hearts. But that's coming from the fact that we already have this dveikos, we already have this essential life. So that's the way we want it to be. It's known that there's a difference, that ava and dveikos are two different things. And the basic difference is just in this one point. That dveikos is this essential connection that our soul has. Again, this is like from our yechida, from our godly soul, that we're essentially one with the essence of the infinite light, blessed be He, the source of all souls. And this is what it says, that God is literally your life. And therefore, when it comes to dveikos, this essential connection, it just says that you are connected. It doesn't say that you should connect yourself. It just says you're automatically connected. That you, because you have the essential root of your soul, you have this godly soul that's essentially connected and automatically connected with an essential connection, and it's a constant connection, and it's not just an inspiration that happens at times. Sometimes you get inspired to be connected to God. Kamaisha Kosov, Kamaisha Amar Rashbi, like Reb Shimon Bar Yochai said about himself, Bechad Katiris Katarna Be Achida Chulu, that with one knot I am bound to him, and to him I unite. And like we'll explain, this is the fifth level, the Yichida of the Nefesh Kiss. And this is something that every person has. Every single Jew has this essential connection. Even the lowest soul. So like we're going to see, there could be a person that the level of their Nefesh Kiss that's revealed within their body in this world is only the level of Nefesh. So when it comes to the revelation of it, there's 5 levels, Nefesh, Neshama, Chai, Yechida, and different levels could be revealed. But every single person, even the person that only is revealed in their body level of Nefesh, it's coming from this Yechida, and that's really what's shining into it. And so we want to make sure that we connect that Yechida, turn that on, and that's what's getting plugged in to whatever level we're on. That's the point. Therefore we say, Shema Yisrael. Right, we say Shema Yisrael, Hear O Israel. Why do we say Yisrael? Because specifically because we're Yisrael, and in general, in like you see it, if you look carefully in Rambam and also in Kabbalah, it's very clear that the term Yisrael refers to Nefesh Kiss. So we say here Yisrael, we're speaking to Nefesh Kiss. This Yechida, Yadu as is known, Shezeu Limsar Nafshe Be'echav Pasuk Rishon. That in the Pasuk Rishon of Shema, we're speaking about this Mesiras Nefesh that we're supposed to have. We're supposed to be completely committed to God to the point of self-sacrifice. And once, and that level of Mesiras Nefesh of Shema is coming from the Yechida, from this essence of the godly soul. And after we've plugged in to our essence in Shema, then we say, Hatzive, the command of Yahavta, you shall love Hashem. Mitteler HaNefesh, with an inspiration that's coming based on understanding and emotions and things like that. And that mitzvah of Ava requires a commandment. We're told that you have to do work to do it. Be a giyas hanefesh, and that takes effort. You have to learn, and you have to think, and you have to work on yourself to acquire that love. And nikra pulchana durchimusa, that's called the toil, the labor of love. As is explained elsewhere and is known to everyone. So this is the basic idea, that what Chassidus wants is that we should first turn on the Yechida, and that's the idea of Shema, and then that should get plugged into Ve'ahavta, to our creation of our inspiration. And when we do it that way, then it's always a good thing. We don't have to worry about it being yeshos like we're going to see and stuff like that. This is the very same general rule, the general principle that we said before. That's the whole purpose of what the Alter Rebbe wanted, that he wanted our inspiration to be a godly inspiration. In other words, it should be coming from this Yechida being revealed and being plugged in. And then we should be starting from that essential connection. And that should be, we should be bringing that like a Muna into our Seichel, a Muna into Pneumius, and things like that. As opposed to it just being a purely rational, intellectual thing that's detached from that godly essence, that Amuna. But in this Avaida that's done properly, this itself has 2 stages. There's first the Dveikus that comes from the essence of a Nefesh Kiss, and then there's an Avaida to bring that pure Muna, that pure Mesiras Nefesh from the Yechida, to bring it into our intellect and into our Nefesh Bahamis and things like that, to reveal it, and that's called the Mitzvah of Ava. Okay, so that's the general idea of Inyanhu, Yedua. Sheyesh b'nefesh kiss hey madreges. Nefesh ruach neshama chai yechida. There are nefesh kiss as 5 levels. Nefesh ruach neshama chai yechida, level of nefesh relates to action. Ruach relates to emotions. Neshama relates to understanding. Chaya relates to ratzon, and yechida is the inner self and tainug. B'hayeser naila hu b'chinis yechida. The highest is the yechida. B'hu b'chinis hiskashros udveikos ha'atzmi. Shedavak v'kasher b'tzmidos, kamay shekasa be'achida b'le'achita chulu. And this is, like we said, that essential connection that the soul has to God that's constant and can never change, like the Rashbi described, that I with totally one with Hashem and totally fired up with Hashem. The Yeshnai Gam B'Kol Echad Yisrael B'Kol Chada from Shir Dirlei, and every single Jew has this. Every one it's revealed on their level, but everyone has it. This is what we call the pitfall yid, that inner essence of the Jew. So this is what we need to explain. So what does it mean that every Jew has this yichida, and how do we reveal it? How do we plug it in? Because we see tangibly that even the simplest, lowest Jew, when it comes to their understanding and their midas, they might not know anything, and they might have very coarse midas. They may not be very refined, and nevertheless, kasher yishma is a dover being that when they hear something about godliness, like about how God surrounds the world, He transcends everything, and He pervades everything, He's in everything. They get very inspired, very uplifted by this. Like we see the Baal Shem Tov, the Maggid, the Alter Rebbe, they were all teaching even the simplest Jews. And even the simplest Jews were able to reach very, very deep levels of connecting to Chassidus, even though they weren't big scholars. B'lashon Yiddish, their hearts there. They hear it in a very personal way. They feel it very deeply and very personally. They internalize it, like they would say. And this sensitivity to the Chassidus, it's not coming just from the intellect, it's coming from the root of their godly soul. It's coming from this godliness in their soul, that they have this essential thing that God chose to give them a godly soul, and they have this essential thing inside of them. It's not based on their work and their knowledge and their refinement and their avodah. And this is their yichida. And this is higher than their even than their intellect of their soul. And this is their essential connection to God. Which is called dveikos, or alokos maybe kasher yubshach hanitos achar shal habes gavna. And so therefore, like we see, even the simplest person is drawn after godliness just because of the nature of this godly soul, this essential godly connection. And they're automatically drawn after or connected to it, like a spark is drawn after. If you have a spark and you have near a big flame, a big torch or something, it's drawn into it. And this is what's called a godly inspiration. In other words, it's not something that is based on logic, it's not based on reason, it's just an innate, essential thing. It's intrinsic and it's innate. And that just God chose to give us this nature. And that's the idea, that's like an Ein Sof, it's an unlimited thing. It's not, it's like, again, just later we're going to get to Shar Yichud, but there he talks about like the idea of the Chafetz Chesed, that a person has this innate desire for kindness. So the idea is that that's something that a person has because of their very nature. It's not based on external circumstances. It's just something that's innate to the human soul. So in a similar way, that's what we call a godly thing, that it's like it's an Ein Sof, unlimited thing, and it just can get plugged into different situations. So the same thing God puts inside of our soul, certain innate things. There's certain things that are innate to the human soul, and there's certain things that are innate to this godly soul. And so this godly soul has this innate idea of being turned on to godliness and wanting to know truth and wanting to contribute and do kindness and do all these things. Okay, so that's the basic principle. But now he's going to show there's certain confusion and mistakes that can come into this idea of what this is and how do we know, how to identify when something is coming from this godly soul and when something is more chitzonius than this. Okay, one second. Excuse me one moment. Okay. L'chura yipo bazeh tos menakatz. But seemingly people have extreme mistakes regarding this idea, this klal, from one extreme to the next. Kivade nimsa mamish bechinas dveikus bedugma zois bekalma oid. Lachol, avo hi chafchis legamri she'ena begeder hispilus leika klau klau. People mistakenly think that they are able to get turned on this level and they're connecting from their yichida very, very easily. But what but sometimes what they're actually having is something that's completely opposite of this, and it's not a godly thing at all. V'hu ma shenira ba'alo, and this is what we see tangibly. She'espilus roi b'hamain hu b'espilus chitzenius, b'dimyein shav b'navsham levavam, b'tfilasam habab b'chnisal k'chitzenius, b'leiv basar bilti arvachais pimis klal v'leila Hashem klal. That the inspiration of most people is a completely it's a completely external thing, and it's just a false imagination that they're they not because basically it's not coming from a hispainos about godliness. They're not thinking about God. They're just doing something to get themselves inspired. Maybe they're imagining something. Maybe they're um, you know like it's the Friedrich, in one of his stories, he talks about somebody before he became a chassid, he wanted to inspire himself. And so he imagined that if he's afraid, God, like a raging bull, he'd be afraid of a raging bull. So imagine God's even bigger than a raging bull. But, so there's different things that people do to get themselves inspired, but it's, and it's fake. Right? And sometimes they'll just, like some people do, they'll just scream and shout when they daven, but there's no feeling inside of it. It's not a sincere feeling. And it's again, there's some sin that still do stuff like that. And I'm not saying, if they're following what the Rebbe says to do, that's fine. But this was something that people used to do in some of the Hasidim, especially the Hasidim of the Kalisker. They would do these very extreme external things, and they put a stop to it. And they said, no, it has to be real and sincere. Because in the person's mind, there's no inspiration and there's no hisbainos, there's no God. They're not thinking about God. Or if they are thinking about God, it's only in a very general way. And this is something that the Alter Rebbe describes elsewhere, and the Mitteler Rebbe describes elsewhere, that if a person just tries to use basically their imagination to just visualize godly things, and like they call it chapik malachim, they're imagining there's nothing except for Hashem, and they close their eyes, but they don't have any real understanding behind it, so they can get carried away by that and get feelings from it, but it's really a fake thing, and it leads a person to become delusional and to become egotistical, and it's he describes it elsewhere more, and that's not a positive thing. וגם זה לא שיש בזה עניין השמיע הנ"ל, בהמשכת הנפש פנימיוס שלו כלל. And in this, that what the person is doing, even if they're thinking these kind of general things without real understanding, they don't have this hair, this feeling that we said, like when a chassid, even a simple person will hear a godly thing, they get very turned on. They're not getting turned on in that way, and they're not really getting drawn in a pneumius way to this. Ki gam behizbainus zois der klal ein lei ba bechinas hashmiya b'lashon Yiddish der hert chelu klal. Because even this general thing that they think about, they don't see it in a way that's really personally relevant. Because the basic idea is they don't see how this is something that's real that they can really apply to their life. They can just imagine it, and it could get carried away because it's spiritual and whatever, and people do all kinds of things. They can go into trances and they can do different types of meditations, but that's it's not what we're after. It's not what we're talking about in Avodas Hashem. And even though the world will call this, they call this type of thing a meditation, they say this is the person's getting in a trance and they're getting inspired and things like that. But it's a completely false and fake connection. And it's the complete opposite of a true thing, which is called a godly inspiration. And externally, it looks the same. Looks like the person is very connected and very focused, but it's not for Hashem. It's not a godly thing. And this relates to the general idea of why, for example, the Rebbe discouraged, let's say, using drugs to find spirituality or these kind of things, or transcendental meditation and all these kind of things, because they are just because a person's experiencing something spiritual, they're not really knowing God in a real way. So really ultimately it's just feeding the person's ego that they feel like they're attaining spirituality and they're attaining, something, but there's nothing real behind it. What we're looking for is more like, if a person was gonna, go to medical school and learn how to cure people, we're looking for something real and tangible that you can actually benefit people with, but whether it's yourself or others, and that comes from real understanding. And so it's a very different thing. V'chol dveikus she'enai laHashem, and any inspiration that's not for God, enei klum, it's nothing. In terms of serving Hashem, that's not what we're after. Ma'aseh Kosov, like it says, "V'atma dveika b'Hashem davka chayim chayikare," that only when you're connected to Hashem, then you're called alive. V'adibuk chitzoni hanal, and this type of external type of connection to something, when a person just focuses and meditates on something in an external way without real understanding behind it, without a real isbainus, shalei Hashem, that's not really for God, kemes mamish choshev, it's considered like death. He because that type of inspiration that a person could get from these type of spiritual experiences, they might get on a trip and it might be whatever, but they're not plugging in their godly soul. It's not going to turn on the godly soul. The godly soul only gets turned on when it's a godly thing and when it sees how it can. There's a truth. It's understanding truth, and it sees the potential to contribute and spread goodness and kindness through it, and it's a real thing. And so a person that experiences the difference between them, you can't confuse them. But a person hasn't thinks, listen, it looks externally the same. I'm looking for something spiritual. This is spiritual. And so there could be this confusion. But really, this is what's called serving yourself. It's self-serving. Blushing Iddish, their herz zich mer nitchul. He's only feeling himself and nothing else. It's not serving God at all. This type of fake spirituality is not even called serving Hashem with their body, because that is still coming from his blindness. When a person is serving God with their body, they're at least serving Hashem. Because serving Hashem with the body is coming from a real hisbainus, where the person is really understanding something and creating a true love that's for Hashem, davka, specifically for Hashem. It's just that love is being expressed in the natural love of the nefesh hativis you could do a hisbainus that will cause the nefesh hativis to also recognize that you love Hashem and also want to know Hashem. And it comes with a commitment, with bittul, to serve Hashem, that I'm recognizing that there's something higher than me and I have to commit to that and feel the sense of mission and duty and purpose, and it's coming with bittul. Kipshutai shal mikra, like the simple meaning of the pasuk, v'havta b'chol avavcha, you shall love Hashem with all your heart. V'amar azal, and our sages say, what does it mean? Why does it say levavacha instead of libacha? Why does it say a double bays? It's hinting b'shnei yitzarecha, that you should love Hashem with both of your inclinations, your yitzar tayv and yitzar hara. And that's the love of the nefesh hativis, which again includes the Yetzer Tov Yetzer Hara. And so transforming both of those to be turned on to love Hashem, working with the nefesh hativis, is also an important part of Avodah, and it's necessary to create the proper kelim and to refine yourself on that level. But that again, in order for that to happen, it has to come from a real understanding of a real hisbainus. It's not just like a spiritual trip, and it doesn't just fantasizing or thinking about something without real understanding is not going to accomplish that. So even though it's true that the serving Hashem with the nefesh hativis is not plugging into this essential connection of the godly soul, but it's still called serving God. It's just serving God with the body. So it's still so basically these are the three levels that we need to understand throughout this sefer. We're going to be trying to clarify. There's the level of the nefesh kiss, what that looks like, and that's always purely godly. Then there's the level of serving God with the nefesh hativis, and that itself is still serving Hashem, and that's a process of refining the klipas naiga that has, again, the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara aspect to it. It's a mixture of good and bad, and it's still a real grounded process that comes from real understanding and real avodah and things like that. And then there's the completely mistaken thing, which is like the Rav naiga, which is where a person is just has this kind of external type of thing, which is just self-serving, and it's not serving Hashem at all. It's just imagining that they are. And that's what we're trying to avoid, is falling into the mistake of having that kind of negative side of Klippa come in, which is that's where the ego is, and that's where the problem is. And that's what we're trying to avoid. So this is what we're going to be doing in the Sefer here, is trying to clarify these three stages and what they look like and how they work, and what it looks like to make a mistake on each level, how to correct the mistakes. Because when a person is serving God with their body, their physical flesh, the physical heart, is getting inspired from the living God specifically. They're actually moved to want to serve Hashem and want to connect to Hashem and want to do Torah mitzvahs and things like that. Like it says, Libi Busari Rananu El Kel Chai. Like it says, my heart and my flesh will sing to the rejoice with the living God. Ubisari hainu leiv basar mamish. And what does it mean by flesh? It means the physical heart. Bispilus leiv basar, with an inspiration that's felt by the physical heart. In other words, you can explain to your Nefesh Bahamis why serving God is actually going to be good for you, even physically. It's going to bring you blessings. It's going to bring you a good life. And that's also part of an Avaida. So this is the basic idea, that a person could appreciate the intrinsic value of godliness that's higher than the world, that I'm connecting to the Creator that's higher than creation. I can appreciate how God gives me blessings and success and life and light within creation, which is the level of Nefesh Bahamis, and therefore I should serve Him. Or a person could go on an ego trip where they want to promote themselves, and this has a lot of different forms. Some he gets into here, some he doesn't. Like, for example, talks about learning Torah in order to prove somebody else wrong. That's like a completely negative thing that's twisting Torah to something negative. So there's things like that are shalai lishma in a way that it's completely bad and is not leading to lishma. Besides the basar v'tayna gashmis, aneg al Hashem b'leiv gashmis, so that the physical heart is actually having an enjoyment from godliness. V'yesh bazeh ma'ilo madrega yeser naila shemagil l'bechinas ha'ava b'taynogim shebechinas atzmis t'yechida hanau k'maishes bar b'samach. And you can refine the nefesh hativis to the point where it's able to actually experience something that's very close to the essential love of delights that's like the yechida of the nefesh al-kis. It's just experience on the level of nefesh hativis, like we're going to explain in the next chapter. Okay, so this is the basic idea that we're going to want to talk about these three levels and try to get those clear. Okay, I think we'll stop here for now. And I see you asked a question of why wasn't Shara Yichud written first? So, I mean, I think there's two things. It's similar in Tanya also. He put L'Kutei Amarim before Shara Yichud V'Emunah. He put the Avaida before the Haskalah. I think what he's going to explain here is really a very necessary Hakdama introduction to Shara Yichud, because it's very important to have the right approach and be able to be watching oneself. In the beginning of Shara Yichud, he kind of gives a summary of this a little bit, of what's the proper preparation and approach a person has to have in doing his Vainunus. So he kind of recapitulates it there in short. But I think the simple thing is that if a person doesn't come with the right approach, a person could learn all that stuff and it could be taken in the wrong way and used in the wrong way. So we want to make sure that's done with the proper approach. So I think that's why he does this first. Okay. So yeah, I guess we'll stop here and have a good week and a good Rosh Chodesh, good Kislev. Chodesh. Chodesh Chassidus. Okay, good luck.